welcome. Today we're looking closely at some source material you shared, focusing on personal stories about Ouija boards.
That's right. We've got these first-hand accounts.
Exactly. 3 different stories, all from people who used or were around when someone used a Ouija board. And things got weird.
Pretty unsettling based on what's described.
Yeah. So our aim here is really just to explore what these accounts actually say. Look at the events, the reactions, just as they're presented in the source.
We're not trying to definitively say what happened, but rather understand the experiences as reported by the individuals involved.
Okay, let's get into the first one. This is from someone recalling their teenage years, found a Ouija board sort of hidden away in a closet at home.
So not something they went looking for initially.
Right. The setup sounds, well, almost typical for a spooky night in. The narrator's 16 with 2 friends, Liam and Jack, and their younger brother, Adam.
Okay.
They're up in the loft bedroom.
Yeah.
Lights off, naturally.
Wow.
And they've got a flashlight pointed at the board, setting the mood.
Creating that atmosphere, yeah.
So they start asking basic questions. Is anyone there? Planchette moves to yes.
Standard start.
Then they ask its age. Moves to 67. Then the classic question, are you a demon?
No.
Moves to yes again.
Okay.
But here's the thing the narrator points out right after that yes. The group kind of bursts out laughing. They figured someone, probably one of the friends, was just pushing it, trying to spook them.
Right, breaking the tension, thinking it's just a game at that point.
Exactly. But then, immediately after they laughed, the flashlight just turns off.
The one pointing at the board?
No, the one they just had sit in the corner, untouched. It just clicks off. The narrator says they crawled over, tried the switch, nothing. Dead. And that apparently completely changed the feeling in the room.
I bet. Goes from funny to genuinely freaky pretty fast.
Totally. They got so scared they stopped right there. The source says they even left the house for a little while just to get away from that room.
Wow, okay. So the fear was pretty intense.
Seems like it.
Yeah.
But it didn't stop there. Later that night, the narrator has to sleep in that same room.
Oh boy.
Trying to sleep, they hear a noise.
Yeah.
Something falls over inside the closet.
Yeah.
The same closet where they found the board earlier.
Okay, getting creepier.
So cautiously, they turn on the light inside the closet, then look down at the little crack under the door. And they see these 2 shadows. Distinctly describes them as looking like feet, just standing there on the other side of the door, inside the closet.
Ooh. Okay, yeah.
Understandably, the narrator screams, runs out, gets the brother Adam.
Right.
Adam comes back with them. They go to the closet. The light inside is still on. But the shadows are gone.
Of course.
They open the door. Nobody's inside. But there was something on the floor. A wooden craft box knocked over.
And the narrator mentioned.
They're very clear. There was no reason for it to fall. No draft, nothing near it. Just knocked over.
Adds a physical element to the strangeness.
Definitely. And the impact. The narrator apparently slept outside that room for a whole week and says they've never touched a Ouija board since.
Yeah, you can understand why. That sequence of events, the laughter, the light, the noise, the shadows, the box, it builds pretty dramatically. It moves from maybe explainable group dynamics to something visual and physical that felt very real and threatening to the person involved.
It really does. Okay, well, let's shift gears to the second story. This one takes place in a totally different setting, an abandoned house.
Right, so a deliberate choice to go somewhere potentially spooky.
Exactly. The narrator here is older, mid-20s, with a friend, George, and they're with 2 women George knew. Mandy, who the narrator says was into that sort of thing, she actually brought the board and candles and Mandy's friend, Carly.
Okay, so one participant is already primed for a paranormal experience.
Seems that way. They drive out to this house. It's dark, isolated, have to walk through woods, climb in through a back window.
Upping the ante on the atmosphere.
Totally.
Yeah.
Inside sounds creepy. 2 old furniture, dusty portraits, you know the drill.
Yeah.
Mandy sets up the board, lights candles. The narrator mentions she used the term high in activity about the house.
So setting expectations. This contrasts with the first story, where it was more spontaneous. Here, it's an intentional investigation, almost.
Yeah, definitely a different setup. So Mandy starts asking questions. Planchette spells hello, then a name, Gregory.
Gregory.
Asks how long Gregory's been dead. It spells 30 years.
Okay, and what are the narrator and George thinking at this point?
They're skeptical. The narrator admits they both pretty much assumed Mandy or Carly were moving the planchette themselves.
That makes sense, looking for the human element first.
But then they hear a huge thump from upstairs, loud enough that everyone jumps.
Ah, an external event?
Right. Mandy asks the board, Gregory, did you make that sound? Planchette slides to yes. And immediately after that, they hear footsteps. Clear footsteps, walking around upstairs.
Okay, that's harder to dismiss as just the board.
So the narrator and George, their minds shift. Now they're thinking, okay, maybe the girls are pranking them, but it's more elaborate. Maybe they have someone hiding upstairs making noises.
A logical leap, trying to explain the sounds.
So they decide to go check it out. They head upstairs, find a bedroom, notice a closet door is just slightly cracked open.
Building suspense.
They're whispering, trying to figure out what to do, and then they hear it from inside that cracked closet door. A really clear exhale, like someone sighing, right there.
Okay, that would be unsettling, even if you think it's a prank.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So they freak out a bit, decide to go back downstairs, probably to confront Mandy and Carly.
Right.
But when they get downstairs, Mandy, Carly, the board, the candles, all gone.
Gone. Just
Completely gone. And the narrator specifically says they didn't hear them leave. No footsteps running away, no window sounds, nothing.
That's odd. Very odd. That complicates the prank theory significantly.
Yeah, big time. They run out of the house, back to the car. George tries calling Mandy straight to voicemail. Blocked him, apparently.
Wow.
And they never heard from her again.
So they're just left there after that whole experience.
Pretty much. The narrator mentions they talked about it a lot, trying to figure it out. Maybe the girls really were trying to prank them or even trap them somehow and were hiding. Or maybe something genuinely weird did happen and the girls just bolted in terror.
It leaves so many possibilities open. Skepticism, then auditory events, then the potential prank explanation, the specific creepy detail of the exhale, and finally the completely unexplained disappearance. It's a story that kind of resists easy categorization.
It really does. You're left hanging, just like they were. Okay, on to the third account. This one shifts again. It's a solo experience.
Ah, interesting. No group dynamics here.
Right. The narrator is a junior in high school. They mention having tried a Ouija board before with their sister, but nothing happened. So maybe feeling a bit braver or just more curious, they decide to try it alone.
Okay. Setting the stage.
It's late, like 1 a.m. Sister's asleep, older brother's away at college. They set up the board in the dining room downstairs.
So, quiet house, middle of the night, trying it alone. Got it.
But this time, it's not the board that does anything. Instead, the narrator starts hearing noises from upstairs.
What kind of noises?
Soft footsteps first, then a muffled voice, a female voice, coming from directly above the dining room, which is their older brother's empty bedroom.
Okay, that's immediately strange if the brother's away and sister's asleep elsewhere.
Exactly. So the narrator gets curious, maybe a little creeped out, and goes quietly upstairs to investigate.
Okay.
As they get closer to the brother's door, the voice gets louder. Still muffled, but definitely there. They put their ear right up to the door.
Listening in.
And they realize it sounds like an older woman speaking.
Yeah.
The narrator says their first thought was maybe somehow their sister got in there and was trying to prank them, disguising her voice.
Trying to rationalize it.
But then they listen more closely, and the voice isn't just mumbling. It's repeating something.
What was it saying?
It was saying over and over, "Grandma's here, Georgie." And the narrator realizes two things. One, it sounds exactly like their grandmother who had passed away. And two, their dead grandma's name was Georgie.
Wow. Okay. That is incredibly specific.
And personal.
Yeah. Talk about chilling. The reaction was immediate. Threw open the door, flicked on the light.
And the room.
Empty. Completely empty. And the moment the light came on, the voice stopped.
Just like that.
Gone. The narrator describes just pure terror. Ran to their own room, locked the door, felt totally disoriented, started praying.
I can only imagine. That's profoundly disturbing.
The source mentions they stayed awake the entire night. And even 8 years later, they remember that night vividly. It clearly stuck with them.
Understandably, unlike the other stories with potential ambiguities like pranks or group suggestion, this is reported as a very direct, very personal, and seemingly inexplicable auditory experience tied to a specific deceased relative.
So those are the 3 accounts from the source material. Different settings, different people involved groups, solo, but all ending with these disturbing, unexplained events connected to using the board. Yeah, the common thread running through these particular stories, as they're told, seems to be that interaction with the board is followed, sometimes immediately, sometimes a bit later, by these anomalous experiences. Strange sounds, movements, shadows, voices.
Right. And leading to genuine fear.
Intense fear, yeah. And a lasting feeling that something happened that they just can't easily explain away. It disrupts their sense of normalcy.
It really makes you think, hearing them laid out like this. How much does the setting play a role? The abandoned house versus the familiar bedroom.
Or the mindset, the teens half joking versus the person deliberately seeking contact alone.
And what about things like, the power of suggestion? Or maybe our senses playing tricks in the dark under stress.
Those are definitely factors psychologists would point to. Things like the ideomotor effect for the planchette moving, auditory pareidolia for hearing voices and ambiguous sounds, heightened suggestibility in group settings, or even hypnagogic experiences if someone is tired, like in the third story late at night. These offer potential frameworks.
Sure, but the people in these stories, they seem convinced something external happened. The flashlight turning off, the box falling, the footsteps, the voice.
And that's the core of it, isn't it? The subjective experience was profoundly real and impactful for them, regardless of the ultimate explanation. The source presents these as genuine accounts of their experiences. The second story even shows the participants wrestling with different explanations, prank versus supernatural, highlighting that ambiguity.
So, for you listening, having heard these 3 specific accounts from the material provided, the shadows, the vanishing friends, that very specific voice.
Yeah.
What parts stand out to you? What questions do these particular narratives bring up for you?
Because these stories, presented as they are, they do touch on those questions about perception, about coincidence, maybe about phenomena that push the boundaries of our everyday understanding. They capture that unsettling feeling when something happens that just doesn't fit.
Well, thank you for sharing the source material with us. It certainly gave us a lot to explore in these accounts.
And maybe a final thought reflecting on these stories. When we encounter narratives like these, describing such a range of events from the seemingly physical to the deeply personal and auditory, how do we approach understanding experiences that, at least for the people involved, seem to step outside the bounds of normal reality? What does it tell us about how powerful and sometimes perplexing subjective experience can be?
Definitely some chilling stories and a lot to think about.